Dan 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 Dan. Hello and welcome to the Dan and Not Dan Sports Show. I'm your host, Professional Dan. Meticulous Dan has been poring over some research. What are you looking at? It's looking like the year of defense so far, Professional Dan. 41 of the 64 final scores so far this year have been 20 or lower. Compare that to 30 last year. Interesting stuff. Drunk Dan, what's in your glass today?
Whiskey sour. If drinks were movies, this would be Enemy of the State. I often seem to forget it exists, but whenever I think of it, I remember that it's actually pretty damn good.
You're right. Now I want to watch that movie. Not Dan. What do you think are the interesting talking points this week? First, I'd like to discuss who's in worse shape, Dallas or Minnesota. Then, I'd like to rechristen Mark Sanchez as the best thing ever. Then I thought we could debate Paris Hilton's drug situation. We will do none of those things. What we will start off with is a congratulations to both you and Meticulous Dan for correctly picking Week 2 upsets. Not Dan, you had Tampa Bay beating Carolina. Yes, I did. I gotta say, well played. Josh Freeman is starting to look like the guy I thought he'd be coming out of the draft last year. He carried the offense to a very convincing division win. And Meticulous Dan, you had Chicago beating Dallas. Being right never felt so good. To all the doubters out there, clearly Jay Cutler with Mike Martz's offense is a winning combination. And, yes, I believe that qualifies as Not Dan's overly hasty conclusion of the week. As for Drunk Dan's upset pick of Jacksonville over San Diego, not so much.
I was drunk, what can I say?
This game didn't get a lot of national attention, so we're giving it now. Meticulous Dan, you have a new award you want to give out? That's right, Professional Dan. I'm all about the little guy. And in this case, I'm metaphorically referring to the big guys on the offensive line who don't get a lot of notice because they don't have tangible statistics. But I believe one can look at sacks allowed and yards per carry as a team and conclude that a line did well as a unit. My offensive line of the week is the San Diego Chargers, who allowed only 1 sack and paved the way for 5 yards per carry, even with Mike Tolbert having to come off the bench to do the running. Give us the names of those 5 linemen. Jeremy Clary, Luis Vasquez, Nick Hardwick, Chris Dielman, and Brandon Dombrowski, who appears to make Marcus McNeil's absence at left tackle withstandable. And a Charger is also getting your toast of the week, is that right, Drunk Dan?
Yes, it is. Clay Matthews Jr. is most people's defensive player of the week, and that's fine. But the Chargers' Antoine Cason intercepted 2 passes, broke up 2 more, and made 6 tackles. David Garrard tried to pick on him, and it didn't work. Way to stand up for yourself, Cason.
Several teams are now changing quarterbacks. Who's doing the right thing and who is not? Let's start with Buffalo, benching Trent Edwards for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Something had to be done to shake up that team. It makes sense. Fitzpatrick is a smart and capable quarterback, but Edwards has more of the tools needed to carry a team, and that's what the Bills need. It's a dumb move.
Why have a preseason competition between 2 borderline starters if you're just going to go back on it in Week 3?
An excellent question from our resident booze hound. Meticulous Dan, we know how you feel about the Panthers' move to Jimmy Clausen. It stinks. Starting Clausen now is bad for their season and for Clausen's future. How is it bad for Clausen's future for him to get some playing time? He's thrown for less than 4 yards a pass so far and already thrown a pick. He needs more time to learn the offense as a backup. The thing to do is trade for a veteran or even sign someone like Dante Culpepper. I don't think he's doing anything.
Take Rex Grossman, for example. Please, take him.
Old jokes die hard. Finally, the Raiders. Here's a quote from Coach Tom Cable. "There isn't going to be a controversy. I'll make a good decision, the right decision, and we'll go from there."
Oh, you will you, Mr. Cable? You'll make the right decision, and it won't be controversial?
Do you even know what a QB controversy is? Bruce Gradkowski has always been a tough, bold passer who can spark a struggling team. But every time he's been the starter, it hasn't worked out. A spark can only last so long. And Jason Campbell has always been an overly conservative check-down passer. Fair enough. Anyway, it looks like Cable's going with Gradkowski, so that must have been the right decision.
I'd like to interrupt here and cross off all 3 of these teams on my board. Oakland, Carolina, and Buffalo. You're not going to the Super Bowl.
How long did it take you to make that board?
20 minutes. But that's only because I took a 19-minute nap in the middle.
It's a very nice board. Finally, we have the Eagles switch to Michael Vick. This one I like. Vick is the only one of the backups who actually earned a start. What about Greg Cow?
He was playing the Rams.
I just dislike one thing about the Vick move. The way the decision happened, with contradictory statements from Andy Reid on Sunday and Tuesday, is weird, and it makes me feel like the fans are pulling the strings.
Never mind how it happened. It doesn't look like the Eagles can have a winning season with Cobb, and they can with Vick. It's that simple.
Meticulous Dan, what's your interesting stat of the week? There's an overall personal inconsistency with NFL offensive players. No running back in the league has gained 100 yards in both games so far. Similarly, at least 5 quarterbacks had discrepancies of 30 or more points in their passer ratings between weeks, which is why I think it's ridiculous for anyone to be benching their quarterback right now.
Anyone tried filling out a Pro Bowl ballot so far? You can't do it. There are only like 10 people who played at an all-star level both weeks.
Yes, I think week 9 or 10 is really the right time to fill out a ballot, because God forbid we wait until week 17. We've made it this far without talking about the Redskins, but it couldn't last. What are your thoughts on the whole overtime icing the kicker situation? I'm tempted to call it classless and tacky, but it's only fair. Mike Shanahan was the first coach to call the timeout immediately before the snap back in 2007, and his former offensive coordinator did it back to him. What I don't understand is why Shanahan didn't try to ice Neil Rackers on the Texans' next kick.
He was probably thinking, they think I'll call a timeout, but I won't, and that'll psych him out and maybe he'll miss.
That's the only reason I could think of. I don't really care to dissect it anymore. We played well against a very good team, couldn't stop the best receiver in the league when it came down to it, and lost a close one. McNabb is only going to get better with this offense. I still feel good about the future. Where are you each looking for Week 3 upsets? Jimmy Clausen proves you all wrong and wins his first start against the Bengals. I think Detroit rises up on the road and puts another nail in Minnesota's coffin.
People seem to think that after a strong Monday night showing and defeat, the Niners will take out Kansas City. I say nope. Big win at Arrowhead, and the Chiefs go to 3-0.
Meticulous Dan, and I think we have a better name for this segment now. Who's your standout student athlete of the week? One of the games I watched was Iowa at Arizona, and this game was chock full of NFL talents. Iowa has a very strong defensive line, but their supposed star, Adrian Cleburne, was contained all game long by Adam Grant, Arizona's senior left tackle. He might be a little slow. I'd like to see how he does against a speedy rusher. But in this game, he was near perfect. There are always lots of teams looking for help at that position. Well, that'll do it for today. This episode of the Dan, and Not Dan Sports Show was not brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. Buffalo Wild Wings, for people who love sports so much, they'll destroy the integrity of the game to see more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Dan, 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 Dan.